Hi there. Welcome and welcome back to everyone joining us on Rooted to Thrive Conversations that Elevate Our Humanity podcast. It's your friend Rochelle, aka Professor P. And today we have Leslie Marant, founder and principal strategist of the ESP Effect, where they're advising executives, boards, and organizations on culture, governance, and leadership. Now, Leslie is a former chief DEI officer and attorney working inside complex systems, and she'll tell us a little more about that later. But she is known for helping leaders make bold decisions without losing the mission or the people. Leslie and I met through two ways. First, I heard her name when her family member, my friend Carlene, mentioned she was a sorority sister and auntie, maybe even godmother to her daughter, our sorority sister. And then she appeared in front of me and about 100 other members of the Black nonprofit Chief Executives of Philadelphia. And she was discussing how to navigate in our current challenging times with the law, equity, sustainability, and community care in mind. I knew I wanted and needed her closer in my circle. So then I learned my grandson was on the autism spectrum. And as I suspected, Leslie could help, and she did. Leslie, I am so forever grateful that you came into my life. Thank you for agreeing to have this conversation with me today. How are you doing?
I am well, thank you for that lovely, lovely, lovely introduction, Rochelle. I'm well. I'm well.
Yes.
Busy, but I am well. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So today's topic, leadership and dignity under pressure. I can't wait to dig into this. But before we do, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
As you said, I'm Leslie Marant. Pardon me. I'm the founder of the ESP Effect. So it is a consultancy where I we help leaders and organizations. We help them, as you said, we help them make bold decisions without losing the mission, the money, or the people. Those things are not mutually exclusive, and too often leadership is situated as though you have to make a choice between profitability, saving cost effectiveness, equity, money, and those it's not necessary to do that. You just have to be strategic and you have to be intentional about it. So what I do is I work alongside with leaders. I work exclusively with boards and leadership teams, whether you define your leadership team as your C-suite team or a different group of people, but I work exclusively with boards and leadership because in order to solve problems, it doesn't matter if where on an organizational chart the problems appear, they get solved typically at the top. The accountability, the resolutions, the authority, the power to make change in organizations happens at the top, which is why my services are exclusively geared to board leadership and the C-suite. I do a lot of work inside systems that were never designed for people who've lived at the margins. But my focus on helping the leaders make sure that they can protect the organization mission, profitability, but they also protect and center people with dignity, maintain their credibility, and they can protect their mission while navigating pressures.
Okay, so we know a little bit about what you do. Tell us a little bit about you.
Ooh, a little bit about me.
Mhm.
I am, oh goodness gracious. I didn't like this question without going into title. So Leslie Marant is a very pragmatic, straightforward, direct person. My superpower is telling truth with compassion, but I'm direct. I don't like to circle the bush. I don't like the bush circled around me. I say what I mean what I say. I expect people to do the same. I show up. My additional, my superpowers is truth telling with compassion. My gifts, my spiritual gifts are administration and generosity. Um, I am my politics. I grew up very poor by American standards. Maybe not global standards, but by American standards. So my politics are always centered around the people at the margin. I believe that if we are intentional about the building and designing systems and structures and politics where we make sure that the canary in the coal mine is okay. If we make sure that the canary is okay, everyone else will breathe. I believe we do the reverse. I believe we build systems and structures and say, if you live, you live, you die, you die. I don't think that we have to do that. I think we can be intentional about protecting and having safety nets for the most vulnerable and marginalized people because ultimately all of us show up in different ways in this society and there's room for all of us. I believe that creation has made it such that the earth supplies everything that we need and that there is enough for all of us. We have to decide as a matter of will and intention to be equitable, to be fair, to be caring and compassionate about making sure that everybody has the basic necessities of life, has health, has comfort, can rest, and things like that. So I am an unapologetic social justice warrior. I'm an unapologetic anti-racist. I'm an unapologetic Black woman. Um, I'm a mom of three children, three adult children. My interests are health and well-being. My hobbies, I guess it's a hobby or maybe it's a lifestyle. I used to be the ambassador for Black Girls Run of Philadelphia. I'm a lap certified personal trainer, so my health and wellness is important to me. I prioritize those things. I hold my friends and family very close. I value them, and I live a very balanced and full life.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love hearing that. A balanced and full life. That's what's up. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. So, for us to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in this work?
Mm, wow.
Mhm.
So I'm an attorney. So I went to Temple. I'm a three-time Temple grad, Bachelor of Business Administration, Juris Doctor. I went to law school at Temple. I also have a Master's of Law. So I graduated law school. Um, when I graduated college, I was a bank examiner for the finance for the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, then went to law school shortly thereafter. Immediately after law school, I worked for one of the largest firms here in Philadelphia for a while. And then I became a mom and went, being in a big law firm with those hourly billing pressures are kind of challenging. And so I went and worked for the federal government. So I worked for the United States District Court of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania at Sixth and Market for 20 years. Worked with the judges there, took an early retirement there to become the chief counsel of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission because my interest has always been equity and fairness. And the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission is the anti-discrimination agency for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So that discrimination lies to and runs as far as employment, housing, public accommodations. It's not just employment, it's everything. That agency is charged with making sure that that the residents and citizens of Pennsylvania experience Pennsylvania fairly, equitably. So I was the chief counsel there. Been a chief of staff. And then I came to equity work, believe it or not, through my personal training. When I turned 40, I was a lapsed athlete, divorced mom, out of shape, not feeling well, heavier than I'd ever been, and started my personal exercise journey. And so I started working out, running, became a certified trainer, and I did all of what we do with finances and what we tell people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We do the same thing in fitness and health. We tell people your outcomes will be good if you do this. And what I
Mm.
learned is that we are very comfortable. We built lots of individual narratives. And when we build individual narratives, it's very tempting, and we often fall into the trap of not examining systems and structures. Outcomes are far more determined by systems and structures than they are individual effort.
Mhm.
So as a personal trainer, you hear lots of people eat clean, live heavy, your abs are in the kitchen and all of that. But what we do know, what we have learned is that the social determinants of health are as important, if not more important than what you eat and how much you exercise. Where you live, your zip code determines your longevity. No
Mhm.
matter how much you eat well, if you eat well in an impoverished zip code that does not have walkable streets, where you using the built environment to have safe exercise, where your community is often the victim of illegal dumping, toxic water, toxic air, then your health outcomes don't have
Mhm.
anything to do with how much granola or Greek yogurt you drink or how much eat or how much water you drink. Your health outcomes are tied to the systems and the structures that you live in. So, just
Mhm.
like with health and wellness, so through that journey, I began to just learn and read, like, oh, this narrative is a very individualistic. It's a very, we look at health, we look at finances, we look at education, we look at all of the Maslow's hierarchy, all your basic needs. We
Mhm.
look at them with a pull yourself up bootstraps mentality instead of doing a systems analysis, a systemic analysis of where are the barriers? Why is it that people fall off to the margins? And it's very, very tempting to say that it's a result of individual flaws, but it's far more often the result of systems and structures. And so once I was exposed to that kind of thinking, that kind of analysis, I went, I still remained a personal trainer, but then as an attorney who had already done civil rights work, employment work, said, you know what? Um, Diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's it. That's where my legal experience, my legal training can come in. I didn't want to practice law anymore. I didn't want to be in a firm. I didn't want to write opinions or anything like that, try cases or anything like that. But I did want to take the legal background that I had and use it. And diversity, equity, coming into diversity, equity, and inclusion was a natural progression from my personal desires, my personal background, and my education.
Mhm. Okay, wonderful. And we already know why you focus on boards and leaders. So tell us a little bit about how you define dignity in a leadership context, your own and others.
Dignity is respect.
Hmm.
It's not complicated for me.
Hmm.
It's not. It's not.
Hmm.
Dignity is a matter of respect. It is. It is a matter of um, making sure that you treat people with respect, that you are respectful, and that you are respected. That's it. You set the baseline for if respect is your base, dignity is a natural byproduct of that.
That's right. And I know that for every person that is on this planet, our definitions of respect can be different. Yes, but it is possible to connect and respect another person if you're even curious about what respect means to another person,
Sure.
right? Would you agree?
Sure.
That's awesome. That's right.
Hmm.
So today's topic is leadership and dignity under pressure. And we're going to unpack that a little bit. So I wondered if you could share with us a moment when you feel like you had to choose between going along with the system and staying aligned with your core values.
Mm. So many instances. I mean, I can't get into the details. As you know, as you stated in my introduction, I was the first DEI officer for the city of Philadelphia. And we know that law enforcement in general is very entrenched, has a very strong history in the United States and across the world. And so you have to make, there are times where you have to make decisions that you are presented with circumstances that you say, okay, I understand that culturally, the acceptable thing to do is something that goes against my beliefs. But if I'm going to hold on and have dignity for myself, I have to do and or say the things that I know to be right and know to be true, no matter what the consequences are. That requires courage. It is not easy to do. Everyone who's employed more than likely needs their job, right? And so we show up to our employment, our places and spaces of employment every day, and we exchange in exchange for weekly, monthly, biweekly income. We exchange services. We exchange labor for that. That is the contract between an employer and employee. In the best case scenario, we execute that contract with respect, with dignity, in good cultures, in fairness, with processes that make sense. But too often, um, we work in toxic employment environments um, that require people to go along or get along, with things that go against their core values. And we have to make decisions often,
Mhm.
unfortunately, about am I going to be a person who says, you know what, I'm either going to change and shape this space or I have to leave this space. It's not easy to always live with your core values and to remain to have the integrity, to have uncompromising integrity. It's not easy.
No, for sure. And of course, systems unintentionally or intentionally push leaders to abandon themselves
Sure, sure.
or their communities in
Hmm.
ways. I'm curious if you can share a little bit about what signs might be there for someone who might be slipping into that survival mode rather than intentional leadership.
So I think that happens most often when leaders come under pressure, right? When there is little pressure, it's easy to live with your core values. If your core values are dignity, respect, honesty, transparency. When there's no pressure, it's easy to show up. However, when there are pressures, whether they are political, societal, financial pressures, we find out, we've all heard this before. You don't know what kind of tea it is until you put it in a boiling pot. You don't know the
Mhm.
tea all looks the same, unless you have some really colorful teas, but tea looks the same until you put it in the pot. And to be fair and gracious to leaders, leadership is lonely, right? I don't believe that we have good models of leadership in this country. And I'm not talking about the present political circumstances. I believe that we take people who are subject matter experts or really good at the thing that they do, and then we promote them to the first level of supervision. And then the next year, so you become the employee to the supervisor, to the manager, to the director, to the EVP, to the SVP, to the CEO. All because you were a good performer or expert, technical or subject matter expert at doing a thing. But you found yourself over the course of the career and over the course of time being in charge of people,
Mhm.
completely different skill set.
Mhm.
And the best we do in the best scenarios is send people to little annual training. But it is my position that the minute you become responsible for supervising, leading other people, that we have to develop leadership training, pipeline, accountability, so that people move beyond their subject matter expertise, their ability to make money, save money, produce products, or be innovative, and then get teams to do the same. We have to spend as much time as we do get teaching them to perform the KPIs, the metrics, the goals and objectives for the organization and or the business. We need to spend as much time as we do with those aspects of development for leaders. We need to put the same kind of time, effort, money, talent, treasure into making sure that they know how to lead people. Leading
Mhm.
people is not telling people what to do. That is
Correct.
being in charge. And
Mhm.
so I don't believe, I was a business major in undergrad, there's studies and there's schools of leadership and so on and so. But the truth of the matter is that most organizations don't spend and invest sufficiently in
Mhm.
developing leadership that is humane, that is equitable, that is fair, that still knows how to produce. You don't have to compromise productivity and effectiveness to make sure that you are also leading human beings well. So I believe that when we see good leaders, it's the luck of the draw. It's by accident, not by intent or design. And that is why I believe the vast majority of people experience organizations in their toxic states, not in their best states, not in their optimal states. I do believe we have a crisis of leadership. I don't believe that we are intentional about the way we select, develop, sustain, and hold the leaders accountable.
Mhm. Right. Like the bottom line is if a leader was under leadership, right, official leadership that was not effective, what are you going to replicate? More of the same,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. That's my
Right.
position. We don't have
Right.
good models of leadership.
That's right.
All
That's
we
right.
have is the leadership that we know. And the
Hmm.
leadership that we know is not good models. And that
That's
is not
right.
an attack on individuals, that's an attack on our leadership system.
Right, right, right. That's the model that
Right,
people are following. So
right.
they don't know any better, right? You
That's
can't
correct.
do better if you don't know any
That's
better.
correct.
Then
That's
you'll
correct.
seek to develop other people or push people up into leadership like you were, who are highly skilled in a specific area, but not in leading people, right? And we also don't, I mean, you've said this just in another way, we don't make a central requirement for leadership. How well do you build relationship?
Oh, we don't do a lot of things with
But
leadership.
just, well,
So I've led in several organizations. And thankfully, I'm really incredibly blessed. I've had good leaders that I modeled myself out after when I was 20 something years old. I had two bosses who literally determined, without me knowing it or realizing it, who literally set me on this is the way that I want to show up. And I've just made it my business to be like them. And one of them was with a very early job. We had gone to college and I had to leave college and then go back to school full time at night. And so I had an administrative assistant job during the day, and our job was at during the day. I went to school. I worked 9 to 5, and then I went to school at night. That's how I finished college as a full-time evening student. And our one of our jobs back then, this is in the 80s, we had to reconcile. We paid. I worked in HR, so we had to pay the life insurance premiums for everyone that worked at the company. And if you were off a penny, it meant that there was a much deeper problem. It wasn't like you could just say, okay, we just add the penny. It meant that there was, we didn't have Excel spreadsheets. Everything was by hand. So we had to look at all the employees, their monthly rate, figure out why we were off. And you had to do it by hand. So there were three of us and we copied the sheets. Each one of us had, and we're like line by line. You see any difference, any discrepancy? We were at this thing for hours.
mm,
In my early 20s, it was a Friday night. My senior vice president of human resources, this man was, so I was an admin, I had a manager, there was a vice president, senior vice president. He was 3 or 4 levels above me. He was on his way out the door and he was like, okay, ladies, good night. And he says, ladies, good night. And we're sitting, our heads are like, hey, good night. And he says,
mm,
what are you all doing? And we said, we're trying to reconcile. It was after 5 o'clock on a Friday night. And he was like, it's 5:30. Shouldn't you all? We're like, it's due today. We can't leave until it's done.
mm,
He said, well, how long have you been at it? We were like, about 2 hours. He
mm,
went back in his office and called his wife. And then
mm.
he came back in around the corner. He took his coat off. This man was 4 levels above
Yes,
us.
yes.
He took his coat off and he said, somebody make me a copy. You all have been working on it so long, you can't see it anymore. Just hand me a copy. I'll work with you. I promise we'll probably figure it out in one pass because your eyes can't see it anymore.
Mm,
We did not
yeah,
ask him. He contacted his family. He said, I'll be late for dinner. He took his coat off. He rolled his sleeves up.
yes.
That for me, it wasn't a class. It wasn't leadership. It wasn't an MBA. It wasn't anything. It literally was a man who looked and said, one, there were two things. He was touched as a human being, like they can't see it anymore. And then he was the senior vice president. He literally was second in line. There was the president of the bank, and then there was a small team of senior vice presidents. He's
Yes.
second in the org chart. And we were about as low on the org chart as you can be. And he didn't consider it robbery to come in and solve a problem. And like we were done in 30 minutes, and we were
Mhm.
like so grateful. It stuck with me all of my life.
Mm, I love
Right?
that.
You had to be approachable. You had to not think so highly of yourself that any solution to any problem was beyond you. Cared
Correct.
about your employees. That man could
Mhm.
ask me to do anything from
Yeah,
that point on.
there it is.
And
That's
I
right.
was like, Jerry said it. I got it. You know why Jerry got loyalty from me? Because Jerry took his coat off on a Friday night when he was on his way out, and he didn't have to stay there for
That's
us.
right.
And that was my first example of good leadership. And after I graduated from law school, I
Mm,
clerked for Judge Clifford Scott Green, who was the second Black man to be appointed to the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Judge Green graduated from Temple Law like I did. When he graduated back then, they used to give you your rankings for if you, now we're just like, we passed the bar. Oh, thank you. When Judge Green passed the bar, they gave you the rankings. So Judge Green passed the bar with the highest score in the 1950s at the whatever year he took the bar, and he couldn't, there were big white shoe law firms here, and he could not get a job in one of those law firms. And so he, along with Leon Higginbotham, I think the name of the firm was Norris Schmidt Green Higginbotham and Lee, black attorneys, formed the first black law firm in Philadelphia. um, they all went on to become judges and very, very prestigious people. And I had the honor of working for him when I graduated law school. Judge Green's, we had a lot of work in the district court, all the cases, we had to write a lot of opinions. Judge Green was, now, I don't know what he was like when he was younger. All I know is I met this kindly grandfatherly man who never, the judges, some judges, they wear the title, they wear the robe. The being a judge was his job. It did not define him. He did not lead with it. When we would make reservations for lunch or dinner, don't say mine. Don't say Judge Green. And we were like, Psh, we want good seats, Judge Green. But he did not want that. He did
right.
not want that. And that man was on the bench for decades. I never saw him outside of judging in the courtroom. I never saw him judge a human being.
Mm,
Never. Never. And he saw some cases and he was extremely reasonable and pragmatic and a kind man. Um, and so I'm just fortunate that my formation of leadership was from those two men. So when I would get into places that didn't have good leaders, I was like, what is this? And that's my point, is that we can't leave leadership up to the luck of the draw and the luck of personality. We have to be intentional about building leaders who Jerry saw that we got the job done, but who also he did not compromise the people. He could have walked out of there and said, y'all know it's due by midnight, right? He could have gone. Judge Green could have been, he saw all kind of criminal civil cases. He could have been a very jaded person and he wasn't. And so I'm grateful that those two men were my models for leadership, but that is not a national practice. There's no standard of practice. When you think about leadership from a business perspective, the books, the hypotheticals, the stories, the case studies, they tend to use performance as a KPI of success, but never the people.
right, right. And there are books coming out now, like The Self-Aware Leader, that is just beginning to talk about that.
Sure.
John C. Maxwell
Hmm.
has a book out recently on self-awareness, and Harvard Business Review is talking about the vulnerable leader now. Yes, but we're not necessarily teaching it in the classroom. And certainly, so many models before us have a distorted view of what really works, what really helps engage people and engender loyalty.
Hmm.
I've certainly learned a lot, and it often was from examples that were not the best.
Hmm.
However, I've had some of the best as well, like you, but we're talking about you today. So we're not going to get into all of my examples. That was very fortunate for you in your early 20s, right? Like when you were very young and you paid attention.
Yeah.
You paid attention to how you responded and said, oh, so when I'm there, I want that same thing.
Hmm.
Yes. And it also probably comes from a pure place for you anyway, because you love people.
Right.
And I would, you know, say, in my humble opinion, if you don't love people, then leadership may not be for you.
Leadership, you're being kind and gracious. Leadership is not
Leadership
for
is
you.
not for you,
If
right?
you don't love people, go get the job where you sit in the corner, and it's okay. That I don't think there's I think being self-aware is important. You say, I don't play well with others, but I'm really good at this thing. Give me all
Exactly.
I need to do my job, and I'm gonna go sit here and pay me fairly for it, but I don't really play
Mhm.
well with others, so I shouldn't lead. And
Mhm.
something that you said made me think about the self-aware leader. That's part of it, right?
Mhm.
Part of it is being self-aware. Leadership is lonely, right? When you're at the top of an organization, and the higher you rise, your circle gets much smaller, right? You cannot be as accessible to everyone. You can't be like if I was on the widget line and we were great
Mhm.
and we used to go out for coffee and tea and so on and so forth. As I rise in the organization, we can still be friends, but the level of confidentiality I have for certain things, it makes my circle smaller, right?
Mhm.
Understanding the tension between the expectations from the top and my coworkers. Now, that first level supervisor is hard. We used to work together. Now I'm like, oh, I actually am management now. I think of things that I did not previously have to think of when I was a line worker, right?
Right.
And so you develop a different lens. And as you go higher and higher, the stakes get higher and higher. And at least within the organization, not external to the organization, your circle gets small. Doesn't mean you can't be friendly, can't be accessible, but you can't say to your organization, Lord have mercy, I don't know what I'm doing. You can say to another leader, like, listen, I got this problem. You know what I mean? Or you
Right.
can, depending on what the issue is. So part of it is yes, you need to be self-aware. Part of it is also, we're not teaching leadership, we're not modeling leadership well, but part of it is also on those of us who select leaders. We don't
Mhm.
have good systems in place. We bring people to leadership because of real or perceived performance, or
Mhm.
perceived, heavy emphasis on or perceived. Um, we bring people into leadership because of connections, relationships. I know you, you know me. I can help you. Okay, come on. I like this person. I'm a leader. This is my friend. I'm going to bring this person along to be on my team. May not be the best person. Nepotism, favoritism, all the isms, sexism, racism, all of that. We are whomever we are in community with. That's who we select when we're looking
Mhm.
at leaders. Um, and we don't do emotional intelligence. We
Mhm.
don't do leadership assessments. We
Mhm.
look at, can you perform? Can you produce the numbers? Can you get me the numeric metrics? Can you save me money? Can you make me money? Can you make more widgets? Can you diversify the widgets? Can you diversify my sales stream? We don't do, we interview people and say, well, what's your leadership theory? And
Mhm.
everybody sits down and they tell their version that makes them look like a fantastic person. And then we say, well, what was the failure you made? And then we come up with this hypothetical or some real thing that, anybody who interviews well says, and how you turned it into a triumph. That doesn't work.
Doesn't tell you much.
It doesn't
Yeah.
tell us much at all, right?
Mhm.
And if you're savvy, you can do that 10 times a day and find yourself in all kinds of leadership positions. But that
Mhm.
does not tell us how you handle life under stress. It does not tell us how you value other people, how you talk to people. It tells us nothing about your biases that we all have. It tells us nothing about your origin story, because your origin story and the flaws, the strengths, and the weaknesses that we each develop through life, they show up in our leadership, right? And so when we're interviewing, we're asking people for their strengths, and we strengthen, strengthen, strengthen. They can do, and maybe we can verify some of that. But we never assess, is this person a narcissist? Is this person egotistical? How does this person handle opposition? How does this person handle challenge? How does this person handle pressure? We don't do any of that.
Right.
And those are the things that show up when you're leading other people.
Right. And I'm thinking about the really toxic leaders, right? And people are subject to that oftentimes at the top of organizations. It may not be the top leader, but somewhere near the top. And somehow, like everybody else knows that the person is toxic and everybody is suffering because they have to interface with that person, yet they are allowed to stay.
Mhm. Because I read this about 4 years ago, and I have adopted it and paraphrased it a million times since then. Culture is set and shaped by the worst behavior leadership allows, including their own. I'm gonna do that one more time.
Mhm.
Culture is shaped by the culture of any organization is not shaped by how many nice people you hire, how many qualified people you hire, how many go-getters or lazy people you hire. The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior leadership allows, including their own.
Mm.
Therefore, if a leader practices nepotism, practices favoritism, then the organizational culture, that leader who says it's okay for me to have a favorite is going to allow their direct reports to have favorites and down the line. If a leader engages in sexual misconduct, harassment, whistling, oogling, whatever, making inappropriate jokes, then the organization culture will never hold people liable for that kind of conduct because it's okay at the top. So, whatever the leaders of an organization, leaders or leader of an organization, whatever they allow and do not hold people accountable and have consequences for, that's what shapes the organization's culture.
Yes. And so, can you describe what it looks like to hold people accountable without replicating oppressive patterns?
Sure,
Mhm.
sure. So it depends on, there's levels. There's always levels, right? So there are, when people engage in behaviors that we say as an organization, I say as a leader, or we say as an organization, that is not acceptable. Well, most things happen on a spectrum. So, how much harm was done? And is there, so I believe in restorative justice. Hey, one, are you owning it? You owning it lets us know we can work with you. You lay down on the sword. "Ugh, I did that. I have any business doing that. I'd appreciate another opportunity. Depending on the level of offense, we can do restorative practices. Hey, you know what? You engaged in, some banter that went a little left. Let me explain. We have a system because we can anticipate certain in an employment circumstance. Everything that can happen at work has already happened. There's nothing new to any employment culture that we have not seen before. We've seen theft, we've seen discrimination, we've seen harassment, we've seen bullying. There's nothing that we haven't seen, right? And so good leaders prepare. You don't say, well, we're going to build our culture such that we don't expect any of these things to happen. That's naive. We're going to build a great culture. We're going to let people know what the expectations are. We're going to tell you what the accountability system is. We're going to share that with you so it's no surprise to anyone ahead of time. And that's the way we set the foundation for establishing and sustaining a good culture. But the violations are going to come, right? And so now we look at the levels, sort of like a rubric almost, like where are you? Sometimes it's the violation is so egregious that we simply have to bid you adieu. We have to
Mhm.
say, this is unfortunate for you. It is unfortunate for us. Our last result. But this kind of thing we have to set, because you set the example. Again, the culture is set by the thing that the leaders allow. So if we're allowing, a vile sexual predator in our organization, we can't reconcile that. There's no call in for that. You got to go. right? But there
Mhm.
are behaviors that we can fix. We can fix timeliness. We can fix you just coming in here when you feel like, look, we start the day at 9 o'clock around here. Here you come
Mhm.
at 9:22 every day. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Now, I don't believe that's an offense that we should lead you out the door right away. Let's put some accountability in and say, okay, one, and you start with, so what's up with you? You know, we start at 9 every day. What's going on? Is there any way we can work with you? Can we give you some flexibility? Does 10 o'clock work with you? You know, does 10 to 6? Well, no, I got to leave by 5. I got to get my kids. Well, then if you got to leave by 5, you got to get here at 9. You know what I mean? And you start, we have to think of things not so hardcore. It's a 9 to 5 job. Does it matter if it's 9 to 5 or 10 to 6? Does it? Does it? And so we have to be more flexible, but then we address the spectrum of offense. We set the expectation, we address the spectrum, and we deal with people with dignity.
Yes. Yes, thank you. And I'm thinking about your message around surviving a system
Mm.
versus shaping it. And I'm thinking
Hmm.
about those leaders, right? Those who are saying, I'm just trying to survive this.
Yeah, yeah. So
What does it look like for them to move to I'm influencing this
mm,
culture around me? Mhm.
in order to, I think most of us are surviving, if we are surviving our places of employment. I don't know that many people are thriving in the places of employment because of the very reasons we talked about, right? The leadership again is lonely, right? And so when I'm the leader, I report to somebody somewhere, you know, a board of directors in a corporate for-profit organization in public employment, whoever the executive is, the mayor, the governor, the president. You know, unless you are a self-funded, self-created organization, you're reporting to someone. You're holding, and so the survival is this person. If this person is whomever the team or person or people that I report to don't view leadership the same way that I do. Let's say I'm expansive and progressive and self-aware and all of these, you know, forward thinking ways of moving, but I work for people who are not that way, then I am going to be in survival mode. There's no way around it. I'm going to, because I have to function within someone else's um, framework for
Mhm.
what leadership looks like. So that puts me in survival mode. If I am surviving a system, I am not in a position more than likely to shape it. I can shape a system when the people to whom I report have my back and allow me, give me all the resources, space, autonomy to shape a system. If I don't have the support, you got to have leadership support. You got to have whomever can say, I can get rid of you in order to change the culture of an organization or to shape employee experiences in an organization. You have to have the support of the person who can fire you.
Mhm.
If you don't have the support of the person who can say, you're here today, gone tomorrow, then your ability to change, to shape culture and to change things is going to be limited.
Yeah. Yeah, you reminded me of an early experience where I had people calling for my job. I was working at a university, and I probably shared this on another episode, but was working at a university. This was in my 20s, and uh, I was the head of multicultural affairs. So I was helping several student organizations. These are emerging leaders that I'm supporting, but there was a lot of programming as well. And I actually created a unified effort, right? Just elevating their expertise in every area of the students and having them leverage that together so they didn't have to always be breathless doing their programming.
Hmm.
And we had a Black History Month coordinated effort one year. I always paid for the big expensive posters and helped them create a calendar that worked. And even had, like, for Black History Month, we had the International Student Club or the Asian Student Club or the Latino Student Club doing programming during Black History Month. I mean, we were
Hmm.
doing some good things, especially at that time. That was unheard of,
Right.
right? It was like, oh, the Black people handle it, right? So, and we did the same with other celebrations. This one year, we had a speaker come in called the institution a white racist citadel. It was horrible. We were myself and two student leaders were interviewed, and some faculty members were interviewed after the incident, right? And this article gets shaped as if myself and the Black students agreed with the guy.
Hmm.
Not one of us said that. Right? It
Right.
was things like that. And then it's juxtaposed to white professors saying, he's anti-Semitic, he's anti-everything, he's horrible. And then this comes out in a school newspaper. Suddenly people want my job.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes. What is very interesting about this, and I'm talking about a leader having your back, who happened to be a old white man. Okay. This my direct report was the provost. So second in line to the president of the institution. Unbeknownst to me, alumni are calling him. I never know that that was happening. Right, he stood like, she's doing her job,
That's it. That's it.
period. And ask her a question.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then we can talk.
Right.
Not one person asked me a question.
Right.
Like, did you say that? It's a
Right.
student newspaper.
Right.
I love
Right.
elevating students' voices, but they're still learning.
Yeah, they're 20.
And
Frontal
something got
lobe, their frontal lobe is not finished. Yeah, yeah, they're 20 years
exactly,
old.
exactly. And it actually wasn't the fault of the people who actually interviewed us. There
Hmm.
was one, student editor that made
Editor. Hmm.
decisions. So, but just to know that early in my career, I had an example. I would say a good example of someone who had my back.
Yeah.
I too would do anything for him today.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I
Hmm.
think you appreciate you bringing that example up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't want us to lose sight of these leaders who have to make decisions. You've talked about them being courageous and making small daily choices to protect their dignity, their own dignity. And I'm curious about the small practices that protect dignity. What does that look like in everyday leadership?
You don't make big, courageous decisions without making a series of small ones. You know, you don't
Mhm.
suddenly decide to be courageous, right? You are courageous in the small things that make small discomfort. Courage
Mm,
isn't being fearless. Courage is moving when fear exists anyway. When you face fear, when you face confusion. And so the daily practice for leaders that I think helps them is
mm,
telling the truth and letting the truth land
mm,
and accepting the consequences. And so sometimes it's small stuff. Sometimes it's, I'm in leadership. I have a great friend. I would love to hook you up. We listen, but I want to hook my people up. I want everybody to win, except especially Black people. So let's say
mhm,
I get a new leadership position and I really can hook my homie up, but my homie is not the person for the
mhm,
job best suited.
mhm.
So the small daily practice, I love you dearly. I'll do what I need to do to help you get to the point where you can help me. But at this point in time, the best person is here
Right.
and accept that. Right. Because when
Mhm,
when we get in positions, I know I have friends who, should I get some kind of position, will be like, I know I'm coming. And I'm like,
mhm.
for some of them, yes. For
Right.
some of them, no. And so the small daily practices are the things we expect on the big scene, right? Right now, the country is dealing with a DEI backlash with kidnapping immigrants and things like that. and you look at history, you look at Hungary, you look at Chile, you look at Germany and say, how did this happen? How did
Mm,
we get to the point where we were allowing the atrocities, right?
mhm,
How did the Atlantic slave trade happen for hundreds of years? Because people made small decisions. Maybe you never whipped anyone, maybe you didn't toss anybody over the boat, but you thought it was okay to enslave
mhm,
people. So, or you didn't think it was okay, but you didn't say anything, right? The small daily practices, we're faced with choices. We make something like 100,000 choices every day,
mhm.
then they
Yes.
show up in those times. It's not that what you see when we make big decisions, successfully or failure, that is nothing more than the culmination of the small daily decisions that we have made consistently over our lives.
Mhm. For sure. So I hear you say, tell the truth, be honest, have integrity.
Have integrity, tell the truth, be honest, have
Mhm,
integrity, be
mhm.
transparent with wisdom,
Mm. As much wisdom as you know to
as much
have,
wisdom
right?
as you know to have. Prepare. So much doesn't happen by surprise. You know, this administration was preceded by a 900-page Project 2025. Some of this stuff shouldn't be catching us by surprise. We shouldn't still be reacting to it. We should be preparing strategically. We should be going on offense, not defense.
Yes. Mhm.
Right? Preparation helps you make courageous decisions. You can't make a courageous decision if you don't have, if you're put on the spot. If you're put on the spot and you got a plan, you can choose your plan. If you put on the spot and not a plan, you may capitulate to somebody else's plan.
Yes. And in order, I would dare say that in order to prepare like that, you have to not be in a state of overwhelm on a regular basis.
Correct. 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 Leaders too often think I'm the smartest person and the best in the room. No. A leader A leader surrounds themselves with people who are smarter than them. The privileged power, position, pay, and prestige of leadership is simply I am the person selected for this moment because my responsibility is to move people toward collective action, toward the mission, toward the vision, to want to establish what the vision is.
Mm,
If there's a mission that preceded me, to make sure that that mission remains the North Star, to provide everyone with the resources that they need, right? To fulfill their part of the mission. My job is to coordinate and make sure that we're moving, we're singing the same song, we're moving with one beat, one sound, four-part harmony, right? That's my job is to inspire us to say, this is what we're doing, no matter good, bad, hard, easy, right?
mm,
I don't have to be the most capable person. I don't have to do it all. I don't have to be the smartest. A
mm,
leader who is surrounded by yes people does not have a team.
mm,
You have servants.
mm.
You have to create the safe psychological space for your team to function in their full expertise and
Yes.
bring their best gifts to you, which include the ability to analyze your decisions and affirm or challenge them.
Mhm,
And the challenge is not a challenge to your leadership, it's a challenge to the pragmatism of the decision.
mhm.
But if you are leaders, many leaders have excelled and have read their resumes over and over and over again, so they know their strengths very well. But they do not acknowledge how their flaws, their character flaws, and we all have them, show up in our leadership.
Yes. Mhm. And we are human.
Mhm.
Yes, we are
And
human.
so, but the integrity of humanity says, when I err, I stand before you. People respect honesty. I think honesty is so
Mhm.
underrated. I might disagree with the decision you made. But if you
Yes.
don't try to gaslight me and say, well, it was the best for you, if I
Mm,
stand before you and say, I don't know, Or I made that decision, and you know what, team? It was a bad decision. I thought at the time I made the decision, I thought I was making the best decision that I could make. I clearly did not make the decision. I will endeavor to not make that decision again. I'm going to go back into the ranch and figure out what happened so that it doesn't get repeated. And then I am responsible for the harm that my decision caused.
Mhm.
However, I am asking you to trust me to continue. And part of the reason I'm asking you to trust me is because I'm honest enough to tell you and didn't hide and didn't gaslight, didn't throw anybody under the bus. I am human and I erred. For that, I am sorry.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Leslie, I want to thank you for sharing all of what you've imparted. You definitely, excuse me, are gifted spiritually and beyond.
Oh, thank you.
That clearly comes through in every time you speak, right? So whether it's one-on-one, on the phone, in person, on this podcast, or when I hear you on a stage, you provide some piercing insights
Hmm,
at all times.
thank you.
Yes. I
Thank
mean,
you. Thank you.
I'm telling you, and you're funny sometimes. No, no, actually, folks, she's great. When she's speaking, you're getting some exceptionally accurate information and with passion and humor. So if you ever have an opportunity to bring her in to speak, please do so. And I wanted to just say thank you again and again, Leslie. Thank you for spending time with me and the Rooted to Thrive tribe. Do you have any final words? And how can people find you after this episode?
Thank you for one, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate that. Two, I hope the grandbaby all is well or better with the grandbaby. I'm really glad to hear that. But thank you for trusting me with sharing your audience with me. I do not consider it, do not take for granted the careful spaces and places that we cultivate. And I'm very protective of when I invite someone into a space. So I do not consider it just an invitation. I consider it a trust. And so I thank you for that. If you're listening to this, you can find me. I have two websites. One is my keynote speaking website, which is simply my name, www.lesliemarant.com. That's Leslie is Leslie, Marant. So it's www.lesliemarant, all is one word.com is my keynote website, and then my for the consultancy for me to come in and work with your leaders, because they need grace, right? In order to create great environments, they need a safe space that is out of the view of those to whom those that report to them. They need the safety to say, listen, I can lay it all down in here because back at the ranch I have to show up as a leader, but I need some help. I am more than happy to come alongside and work with boards and executive teams, particularly in this time where they need courage, because riding this particular political season out really isn't a realistic option. And so that website is www.espeffect.com, like equity, strategy, performance. Like we have ESP, we have that third sense. www.ESP, equity, strategy, performance, espeffect.com. That's where you can
Excellent.
find me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to thank the Rooted to Thrive tribe for showing up. Today, we explored something every leader feels but rarely names, that leadership inside imperfect systems is hard. It's hard, but it doesn't have to cost us our humanity,
Amen.
right? The truth is, you don't have to abandon yourself to survive leadership.
Hmm.
And dignity is a practice, a daily commitment, a choice we remake moment by moment. So as you go back into work, meetings, your homes, remember this, that shaping the system, not surviving it, is the goal. And folks, I'm Rochelle. Thank you for stopping by, listening to the end. And if you haven't already, Subscribe and share this episode. Until next time, stay grounded, stay courageous, and stay committed to the dignity we all deserve.